having a great Conscious Life Expo, the 15th. How many of you have been here since the day one, back in early 2000? Yes? This is your 15th, your 14th, your 15th? How many have been to 10 or more? How many of you have heard David and Corey speak? Live. Yeah, well, you're in for a treat tonight, that's for sure. So we're really excited. This is our 15th Conscious Life Expo. And I have to tell you, I've been here since day one, and I've seen it grow and expand and just get better and better. And those of you who are with us live, and those of you who are with us out there in live stream land, we are so appreciative to each and every one of you. Because without you, we wouldn't be here. Without you, we wouldn't have the speakers that we have. And this, at this time more than ever, we need to come together. Hello. And I see so many faces that I recognize. It's really great. My name is Shima Moore, and it's my pleasure every year to welcome you and to be here and to connect with some new speakers and to welcome back people like David Wilcock. You know, I'm always looking through my files to see when did he first come here. Now, as far as I could see, it was 2008, but I could be wrong. He said 12 years. Okay, so then it was longer than that. It was probably 2005. My records didn't go back quite that far. But you know, when he first came to us, he came to us as the reincarnation of Edgar Cayce. That was it. Brilliant, incredible, yes. But since that time, he has continued with his investigations to touch people not only live here, not only through his award-winning books, but on Gaia TV all over the world, 3 shows. And last year he came and he brought with him one of our special guests tonight, Corey Goode. And last year was Corey's debut, right? His very first public debut here at Conscious Life Expo. And I think if you go back, you'll see that there's quite a few speakers that have now become household names that started here at Conscious Life Expo. So give yourself a hand, because you are the ones that are bringing this consciousness out there. And we need to do that more than ever. So give yourself and your neighbor a big hand. Great. All right, well, so David is a triple best-selling author of Source Field, Synchronicity Key, and the Ascension Mysteries. He's a regular on the History Channel, Ancient Aliens. I knew he'd be back. Stretching it out a little bit. Ancient Aliens, the star of 3 Gaia TV shows, Cosmic Disclosure, Wisdom Teachings, and Disclosure. As I said last year, David, at Conscious Life Expo, we did the very first live public interview with intuitive, empathic Corey Goode, who was recruited, trained, and served in the My Labs from age 6 to 16, and then 20 years in various programs. Corey and David are the co-hosts of Gaia TV's Cosmic Disclosure, and tonight they're going to reveal groundbreaking disclosures on 5 different groups that are fighting for humanity's positive future and ascension. Hallelujah. All right, put your hands together and give a warm and wonderful Conscious Life Expo welcome to David Wilcock and Corey Goode.
All right, how's everybody feeling out there? Awesome. Okay, the clothes, I get it, all right? Cuban, tuxedo. But there's a method to this, okay? The thing is, The tuxedo comes off when it gets so hot in here from the body heat that we, as your entertainers and informers, are sweating. And in other years when I do this expo, you notice I'm always touching my nose and people are accusing me of doing cocaine. What I'm trying to tell you is that you think it's hot down there, I got 6 feet more of heat that goes to rise, right? And within 20 minutes, my nose is just going to be dumping off sweat. So I will try to remember not to touch my nose. But I don't expect that will work. Okay, so here's a really cool thing that I want to start with, because once we get rolling, this train is just going to keep on barreling down those tracks. What I wanted to start with, just because this might be something really cool for you, is that we, meaning Gaia, where Corey and I work in Boulder, we are hiring, okay? And we're not just hiring like 1 or 2 jobs. We're talking about a huge company that is in a massive growth expansion phase. This is like the equivalent of the California gold rush. Okay, there's gold in them there hills, and the hills are Boulder, Colorado. It's called the Flatiron Mountains. So what we got, if you look at this list, you can't really read it too well, because it's kind of far away, but I will read to you the next one here where you can actually see the positions. Just think about this for a moment. Any of these things. Now, it says there up at the top, Santa Monica B is the room where this is happening. And what that means is if you go down this hallway and then you see to the right of the stairwell going down, okay, there's a room in there. And I'm not kidding when I say that you can actually have a high-level meeting here. Some very important people who are central to the hiring process are here, and it might be a really cool thing for you. So check out what's there. Head of content, TV producer, assistant producer, news manager, news anchor, talent manager, video editor, social content producer, 3D animator, director of photography, seeking truth researcher. Well, that's like freaking everybody in the room. Okay? Please don't like overwhelm them. Sound engineer, writer, financial analyst. That's better somebody else than me. I'm not really good with that stuff. Head of sales, ambassador manager, marketing manager, graphic designer, copywriter, social media expert. That's probably, again, just about everybody in the room. SEO expert, that's search engine optimization, human resources director, data engineer, marketing data analyst, international program manager, customer service representative, fluent in Spanish, Portuguese, or German, or preferably all 3, but that's probably too much to ask, and executive assistant. So, like, it's huge. And this is something in which, if you get hired, you do end up working in Boulder. But I've been spending a lot of time in Boulder, and it's kind of like a little Los Angeles. It's got its own really cool vibe. So that is something, if you've ever thought about it, if you've ever wanted to work with us and be involved in this cool team, there's a golden opportunity, the likes of which may never again happen like it is this weekend. So that's a very cool thing coming up. Okay. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to bring Corey in, and we're going to start a dialogue on some of these topics. This is, and I can promise you this is the most visually robust talk that we have ever given. It's going to be superseded in visual robustness. But you like that? Robustness. I didn't joke about the other one.
You just did. He has to work it into every presentation.
It's part of the game. If somebody tells me I can't do something, then probably I will. You know, that's just how it works.
Well, don't be quiet.
Ooh. I think people would get mad if I was quiet. You know, they paid for this. Okay, by the way, folks, just so that you understand the logistics of what's going on, we have a gigantic line outside the room of people still trying to get in. So we are going to probably end up having a standing room only situation. So please don't be offended by this. This is just what we call a happy problem. Right? When you sell this many tickets, that shows that you are listening and you are supportive. And I want to thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your support. We are winning this war. This cannot be lied about. Nobody can say this is a fake crowd. This is not fake news. This is real. Okay, for whatever reason, y'all are crazy enough to want to come in here and listen to this for 2 hours. So we're going to give you a good show. Well, I'm not crazy. What are you saying, David? Fuck you, David. Hey, look. If people think that you're crazy, I had a Shinto acupuncturist friend who told me, you are becoming more normal. Okay? So we have a more normal audience here. Let's just phrase it that way. We'll keep it smooth. So how the heck did I end up, after being online for 20 years doing all this stuff, how did I end up crossing paths with somebody like Corey Goode? Because it's almost like a foreign language. One of the problems that we have is people who have not really been educated about the big picture of UFOs. They watch something like Cosmic Disclosure, they're like, who the heck is this dude? Because you notice when Corey's talking, he's like totally deadpan. Right? He's not in it he's not like mugging for the camera. He's not wanting to look good. He's out there, and we have both been through incredible hardships to do what we're doing. And we are not giving up. Not even after we did our last taping, and Corey ends up in the frickin' emergency room. I don't know if you heard about this, but I put the whole thing out on my Facebook page, and you guys prayed for him, and that's probably why he's alive right now.
Thank you.
I'm really not kidding. It's a whole other talk I don't have time to go into today, but suffice it to say, there's a guy named Dr. Daniel Benor, and he analyzed hundreds and hundreds of different studies of healing done scientifically in laboratory conditions. 64% of the healing studies of psychic healing showed a profound effect. So what the lamestream is going to do is they're going to show you one of the 36% that didn't work, and they say, oh, see, healing has been scientifically disproven. But we know that it works, and I don't use that power very often, but in a case like that, I absolutely said, this is it. If there was ever a time to marshal the crowdfunding of healing, okay, we did it, and he's still with us. Thank God. I got broken into a very strange new reality in 1993 when a good friend of mine in college comes in all white-faced and says, dude, aliens are real. And I'm like laughing. And he wanted me to sit down, but I could tell pretty quickly he's very serious. Turns out he had a 2-hour private briefing with his college physics professor who had worked for NASA throughout the 1970s. And in the higher echelons of NASA, it was considered common knowledge that extraterrestrials had visited Earth, that they had landed here, that they had crashed their ships, and the ships had been back-engineered into useful technology. And he said, and this was in 1993, within 20 years, the technology that you are going to see will blow your mind, and it will come out in the open. And now we take for granted that we got these little buddies here, okay, in which this is like the whole freaking desktop tower computer in one little thing. We kind of taken this for granted. Well, that's about the 20-year time frame is 2013. Sure enough, all this technology that nobody had anticipated ends up emerging. And that was pretty fantastic in and of itself, of fulfilled prophecy. After he told me this data, which included a lot of specifics, you probably all heard it before, about how there were three types, all this NASA guy knew was there were 3 types of beings, some of which look like grays, some of which look just like humans, but they're definitely not born on Earth. And they might have little differences, like their irises are purple, and they have like a diamond shape instead of a round iris, or subtle little things like ridges on the roof of their mouth instead of a flat palate like we have. You get enough specifics like that, including propulsion systems and all this weird stuff, and you say, you know what, this guy is telling the truth. Then a few years later, out comes Colonel Philip Corso, who literally said exactly the same thing that I was told in the book The Day After Roswell, about parts that had been taken out of UFOs and back-engineered into, and I will list some for you, computer chips, fiber optic cables, light-emitting diodes, LED lights. We didn't have that before. Kevlar, like for the bulletproof vest. Velcro, believe it or not. Infrared night vision. And then there's other technologies that we don't get to hear about, like anti-gravity. So even back in 1993, I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. If our government, if you want to call it that, got these things and used them and could back engineer them, then why wouldn't they have taken off outside of Earth's atmosphere? Why wouldn't they have gone around our solar system? And then why wouldn't they want to land on some of these other places and figure out what was there? So very early along in my work, I was lucky enough to find the work of Richard C. Hoagland, who got into Mars. And this was the way the book looked when I first got it, back in, again, 1993. And it frickin' blew me away because I had heard from my buddy that he had done a presentation at the United Nations talking about the space on Mars that he's pointing to right here. That this is not just some trick of light and shadow, but in fact, as you see here, you have this artificial-looking face. It's clearly human-like with a headdress around it, next to what very obviously looks like a city of pyramids. And let me tilt this so you can see that, because I can look at the other one. Corey, this is new for him too, by the way. We just kind of, we do this, we throw it together, and we make it great. We're both so busy we don't have time to plan these things out too far. So you notice there's some very, very pyramid-like things here, but let's take a look at kind of a side angle now. You see the face up at the top right, the pyramids down there on the left, and look down there on the right. That one down there is a 5-sided pyramid called the D&M. And this is what it looks like from overhead. Do you think that's some kind of just random crater or mountain? No, come on. And also what we see is that the proportions of the human, the Vitruvian man, like Leonardo da Vinci drew, you spread your arms and legs out, that's what it looks like it's a human being. Now this thing is estimated to be 1.5 miles wide based on the size of the Mars orbiter frames. 1.5 miles wide and probably over 1/2 mile tall. You could fit millions of people inside this structure alone. And then the other very strange thing, if you look at it, let's see where, I can probably look at it better here. You'll notice that at the top left, there is this river of what looks like something ran off of it. And it appears that this thing was actually blown up from the inside, and that's the melt-off of all the heated debris that was inside. There was a war. These people got wiped out. So Hoagland also was really into this stuff about alignments, and he said there was all these alignments between the objects on Mars that we found. And I got so excited about this that it began a research binge. In his book, he also described some very strange stuff that they found on the moon, beginning with the first mission around the moon that took pictures, which was not America. It was the Russians in 1965. Now look at this stuff. This is before it all got classified. Now, you're not going to see very much here, so I'm going to zoom in. What we're looking at right now is a photo of the moon. Now, that thing on the bottom left, that circle, is not what we're looking at. That is just some instrument that got in the way of the shot. You look down at the bottom right corner of this photo. I'm going to zoom in on it a little bit now. You can't really see it, so I'm going to do it again even closer. There is a frickin' glass dome down there. You see that on the bottom right? On the limb of the moon? It's a frickin' dome of glass. What the heck is that thing doing down there? That's not supposed to be there. And if you look carefully, you can
used to be a dome.
Well, yeah, it got blown up. No, he's right. And this is all going to be part of our story. So this is a smashed up dome. And this is the physical evidence, okay? This is 1965, before the government was classifying what they saw. There it is. And it looks like a pyramid. You notice that there's two sides that slope up to the same size, and then it's got a flat top just like the ones in Mesoamerica. Very shortly, just a few frames after, the moon rotates a little bit more. That one that we saw on the bottom right is now out of view because it's now covered by more of the moon's size. And then this little guy shows up in the middle on the right. Look at that. You see it over there? Let's take a closer look now. Oh my God. Now this thing is estimated to be miles tall. And you actually have the skeptics trying to say, oh yeah, this is just some glitch in the film. 2 glitches in a row? one that looks like a pyramid of glass, one that looks like a tower. You're telling me that's a glitch? How could this thing be sticking miles above the surface? Now, if these were the only examples, that would be fine, but then we have this very, very strange thing Hoagland found. Frame 4822, a lot of times you ask for it, you get totally nothing. It just looks black, but then he kept asking for it, and it turns out that one of the times that they sent in a request for it, they got this guy. It doesn't look like a whole lot, and one of the things that he pointed out here was this weird little area in which you see what appears to be a square clearing right here. And you can see the sides of the square. You also see what kind of look like pyramids, like a row of pyramids here. Okay, that's all fine and good. Some people want to believe that, some people don't. But when you go over here, NASA typically crops it out right about here. But when he got the original, when whoever was supposed to hide things away in drawer 4822 forgot about not giving them the original, because they got 12 different copies of this thing, some of it didn't have this cropped out over here, and this is what they saw on the surface of the moon. It's in the original. Lots of people have seen the original. This is not fake. Do you think that looks like a geological formation? Absolutely not. This is a base. It's very likely an active base. This was taken during the Apollo missions, so we're looking at like 1969. And it clearly looks as if you have a series of rooms that are all interconnected at right angles and a tower in the middle that sticks up a little more. And it looks like it's made out of glass-like material. There could be lots of people living in there. Then we have this very strange thing. This is an example of photos that the engineer Ken Johnston was told to destroy his original copies of Apollo photographs, which he was storing. At one point, they were stored in a broken-down, vagrant McDonald's, believe it or not. And it was no longer being used, and so there was all these boxes of NASA images of the moon, and they told him, burn them, destroy them. And he didn't, thank God. Now, we've had Donna Tietz for the Disclosure Project 2001. I was there. She then got the name Donna Hare, saying that NASA, her testimony was that NASA airbrushes real stuff out of these photographs. This is the official NASA image of this frame right here, and you notice down here where the arrow is, it's different. If you go to the Ken Johnston version over here, there's a frickin' dome on the surface of the moon, which they deleted. So please, when your friends are telling you, you know, this is a live stream, so you guys can get this, and you can have this at home. You can watch it as many times as you want. You can show people the proof. Something is going on here. There's stuff on the moon that isn't supposed to be there. And then this one really blew me away. This is when Richard Hoagland and I ended up co-authoring together. This is the original NASA AS-14 669301. And it doesn't look like much, although there's this little tiny fleck of blue you can't really see. But when you image enhance it, you see all this stuff that looks like glass. And then another frame taken just a few steps away is 669279. Look at this. Just with a little bit of Photoshop, all you got to do is use the curves filter, which just pulls out more of what's in the image. And all of a sudden you see glass beams on a massive scale. I mean, this thing, whatever they posed in front of, it is frickin' enormous. Okay, that is an enormous, enormous object. Here's another example where the sun was setting and light catches off of some of these glass ruins. And you see shards poking up off the surface of the moon. It's totally amazing. Now, Corey has also talked about the idea that a lot of ships were left behind on the moon's surface. And this is one that I didn't put in my book. For whatever reason, I could only use so many images. But this is AS-15, P9625, and 9630. Now, look at this. What we're seeing here is a crater that has this very strange object in it. And when we do these two images together, and then we basically sharpen it using known filters, look at what happens. It's called a composite. Oh my gosh. Now, Corey, does this look like anything that you've ever seen? Do you think this one is a real example?
It very well could be. There are a number of crashed vessels that are on on the moon that were from antiquity. There was a major treaty signed, and in that treaty, they left all of the debris from the big battle that they had as a reminder or a testament for other generations, so that they wouldn't have such a terrible war again.
So to me, this is an example, and this is another one that's really, really classic. It's called the Blair Cuspids. I talk about it in the book. This is one of the only surviving images of it from Argosy magazine by Ivan T. Sanderson. And if you can't see it very well, let's do this next one. Okay, what you're seeing here is literally an object that is many stories tall, at least 13 stories tall, obelisk on the surface of the moon with others around it. And this was formally being analyzed scientifically as of about 1968, and then once again the clamp goes down. So Corey, do you think that they were deliberately allowing some stuff like this out in case they might disclose earlier than they ended up doing? Is that part of what was going on here?
Yes, they have to seed the consciousness. That's the way their magic works. They will put out information and then redact it or ridicule it later, but the seed is planted. So yes, it's to set things up. That they have things planned out hundreds of years, and it's just a part of their limited disclosure.
All right, the jacket is off. This is getting real, folks. We've gone from Tux to Cuba. Okay. Now, this was a Russian depiction of a more side-angle view of what they think was down there. And sure enough, it looks like a city of obelisks. And interestingly enough, a comic book that comes out 2 years after this breaks into the news called UFO Flying Saucers issue number 2 actually did a comic treatment of this. Here's the cover of the magazine, and Gold Key Comics, they're the ones that used to do the Donald Duck. My father used to take me to the newsstand every Sunday. I'd buy these Gold Key Comics all the time.
Our graphic novel's going to look way better than that.
Okay, fair enough. This is a historical document, though, bro. You got to appreciate that. And sure enough, what we see here is UFOs on the moon. And then, sure enough, we have this guy here, and he says, my colleagues and I believe that they may be some kind of obelisk, completely different from anything else on the moon's surface. Now, I don't know if you can see what I can see from here, but you look at this dude's eyes for a minute. Those are the eyes of a happy man. That's all I'm going to say, folks. They are blood red.
Keeping the secret is
you can
just too much.
extrapolate. You can extrapolate from that what you like. He looks like he is baked as a cake. Okay, I'm going to make it easy for you. It wasn't legal back then either. But there's the obelisks in 1970 comic book. Freaking crazy. And then they fictionalize a little bit, and they have one of these obelisks which creates some kind of gravitational field around itself. But Corey, look at this. All this freaking ancient space junk and bodies captured by the gravitational field of the obelisk in 1970. What do you think they might be telling us there?
They're prepping us for either ancient builder race or some of the groups that came afterwards that built structures.
Right. And the idea being that there's a lot of junk left behind on the moon, right?
Oh yeah, it's covered in debris.
So that's a very interesting thing. There's all this stuff going on, including back in 1958. Now remember, the NASA frame of that face that I showed you, that didn't show up until 1976. This is 1958. What the heck is this? Come on. How do you possibly maintain a skeptical opinion in the face of evidence like this? A 1958 comic that is called The Face on Mars, in which the actual shape and structure of the face itself, other than the fact that it's tilted up straight instead of lying flat, it looks freaking identical almost to the actual face on Mars. And then the whole story is, I talk about this in Ascension Mysteries, my new book, it's all about this ancient race that warred and blew up their planet. They talk about the asteroid belt being the remnants of this exploded planet. So I'm doing all this research. Hoagland's book totally blew my mind. I'm seeing there's ruins on the moon. There's ruins on Mars. Somebody's been out in our solar system for a long time. Then in 1996, I read this Law of One material, which the first book of which is called the Ra material, because Ra is the name of the source. It claims to be a positive entity that helped the Atlanteans and the Egyptians way back when, and their message got distorted and confused, and they had to withdraw. Then they come back, and they were able to get through people that were actually doing intuitive channeling and get messages through. Now, in general, I don't really endorse channeling at all. I think it's kind of really taken a big downturn. But you read this stuff, it's like diving into some frickin' scientific manual that has all this jargon and all this very interesting stuff going on. And Corey, we're about to get into the space program, but when you were in the program, did they know about this?
Yes, absolutely. The rank and file were told that it was Luciferian and evil to stay away from it.
Right.
But the brass were encouraged to read it and a number of other books.
So the thing that blew my mind is that there was so much stuff in this Law of One that matched up with the research I had gotten out of 3 years of reading probably 300 books. And it's a terrible shame because I left my computer behind when I moved from New York in the house that I'd been staying in, and I had a complete list of every book I'd read in college, and it was about 300. And I lost that file, which drives me crazy. Anyway, here's the cosmology, because it's not just all this weird stuff about ETs, it's a philosophy that they're teaching in this material, and it's very strange. It says that the only thing in the universe that really exists is identity, consciousness. Meaning there's only one identity, there's only one consciousness in the universe. Then, it basically says this cosmic consciousness became lonely or bored, something like that, and it decided to experience multiplicity. But the trick is, it can't just sit there like somebody crazy in the corner with two puppets on his hands and, ha 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 ha, oh yeah, yeah. It had to actually give each piece free will to be able to define its own curriculum. And so that law of free will becomes central to the whole discussion. The law of free will. Free will must be preserved for anybody in the universe, which means if you violate free will, you get karma. The universe then separated into these 7 major layers that we could think of like the colors of the rainbow or the sounds in the white keys in the piano called the diatonic or solfeggio scales, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And each of these colors represents a dimension, if you will. So there's 7 major dimensions, and they all correspond with your 7 chakras in the body, these energy centers moving from the root chakra up to the crown. So they say these are actual planes of existence, and weirdly enough, they say you have bodies in each density. So even though we're human here, you're also multidimensional. You already have a 4th dimensional, 5th dimensional, 6th dimensional, and 7th dimensional body, and you are also the one creator at the same time. And all those things are happening at once because actually there is no time. We're going to get to this in a moment, but Corey, how does the Law of One cosmology, as we're saying it so far, jibe with what you've already heard in person from these beings we're about to meet, the Blue Avians?
It falls in line perfectly.
So the densities, they've actually described where some beings came from one density, some from another, things like this.
Right. They all started from source and returning to source through a process, and these densities are consciousness. They're not different dimensions outside of where we are now.
And they all coexist.
Right. A 4th density being we could interact with just as much as we can a 2nd density being.
Right. And let me point one thing out here really quick, which is that I was confused on this at first because, okay, well, we're 3rd density, but then there's 1st and 2nd. And they explain that these are 3-dimensional things. Like you have a 1st density could be earth, air, fire, and water. One of those 4 elements. 2nd density is where those raw materials start to appear as biological life. Everything from single-celled organisms, plants, animals, all the way up to complex animal, birds, things like this. Everything except humans is where you get individuation, self-consciousness. That's 3rd density. Now, before these densities ever went any farther than just being essentially coexisting layers in the cosmos, the first great central sun is formed, the first star. That star buds off other stars. Those make more and more and more, and they eventually flower into galaxies. Then galaxies bud off new galaxies. The stars in those galaxies, in turn, are spitting out planets, And then the planets have water, and it's actually far more common than you realize, intelligent life. As a result, we have countless numbers of intelligent civilizations scattered throughout our universe. So this is, we have this idea, oh, we're God's chosen, we're the only ones. That's a narcissistic view. But it's very important. Some people think that if there's other civilizations out there, that this one could just get tossed by the side, not get paid attention to. Oh yeah, we'll let that one go. We'll let that planet get wiped out. But what they tell us is that they're very interested in making sure that every part of creation is protected and nurtured and supported. And so we're about to see how much they came in to help us here. Just very quickly, this scientific study from Pettigura and other scientists came out October 2013, the prevalence of Earth-sized planets orbiting sun-like stars. This is an official NASA study. And what it says here, you can read it down here, 22% of sun-like stars harbor Earth-sized planets orbiting in their habitable zones, and the nearest may be only 12 light years away. And when you actually get in there, the statistics of what this thing tells us is totally astonishing. We're just going to go through this quickly. I've used this now like 5 years in a row, ever since it came out, or 4 years, I guess. At least 1% of all stars in the universe have a habitable, watery planet like ours. That's 100 billion Earths. It's crazy. There's 100 Earth-like planets for every grain of sand on Earth. Try to imagine that one. There's one guy in the back, he's on 3 hits of acid. And he knows exactly, oh, there he is. And he knows exactly what I'm talking about. He gets that. Oh, dude. 100 Earths. I'm going to find one with 100 on it right here. Let it flow through my fingers, bro. Assume... Corey's not laughing. That's bad, okay? I probably need to let him talk a little bit.
I've heard all of this so many times.
We assume only 1% of these planets that are watery have life on them. That means every grain of sand on Earth, this is from that study, represents a planet with actual life. And it's probably a lot more than that. So, it gets even better. Let's just blast through this. If 1% of those planets with life has intelligence like we see on Earth, which is actually an underestimate, that would be 10 quadrillion intelligent civilizations in the universe. It's unthinkable, almost. You apply that to our galaxy, and they estimate we have 1 billion Earths, which, by the way, this is an old study. They've now jacked it up to 40 billion Earths just in our galaxy. 40 billion. 100,000 intelligent civilizations, and the Law of One estimates there's about 100 million intelligent civilizations just in our galaxy. So this is a gigantic number. And the Law of One also says the vast majority of ETs are benevolent. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, for the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, it seems like the ones that cause trouble like to kick it around.
They're trolling here, aren't they?
Yeah, they kick it around Earth a lot.
This is like a little oasis for the negative because it can still live here. It's been kicked out, apparently. So, back then, I didn't know that somebody would come forward with information that verified this, but Ra explained that they started out on Venus 2.6 billion years ago. And they said they had a strong affinity for the pyramid shape, meaning that they built it all over the place. So, Corey, that's what we're going to call the show, right? We've talked about this. The show is called So Corey. We're not going to call it Cosmic Disclosure anymore.
This is kind of a similar format.
So Corey. Isn't it interesting that it says that they were building pyramids all over the place 2.6 billion years ago in the Law of One?
Very much so, since one of the things they've discovered in Antarctica is a number of super large pyramids that date back about 1.8 billion years.
And you also dropped a bombshell on me when I was working on Ascension Mysteries, which is not only had I heard from Richard Hoagland's top insider, who we're calling, I want to make sure I say the right name, we call him Bruce. We mind if we call him Bruce? Yes, we call him Bruce. If you've ever seen Monty Python, you'll get that, but not one person laughed. He's freaking dying on stage. Oh my God. He told me that we're in a cosmic junkyard. And what he meant by that is that there are these pyramids and obelisks that look like they're made out of some kind of crystal on moons and planets all over the place in our solar system. But he was told that that's as far as it goes. We haven't explored past the boundaries of our solar system, because at that level, what we're calling the Military-Industrial Complex Space Program, or the MICSSP, that's all they know. But then, Corey, you told me that there's more pyramids and obelisks of crystal out there than just in our solar system. How widespread is this thing?
It is in the approximately 52 closest stars in what is called the I keep using the NASA term, the local stellar
local cluster.
The local star cluster is what they call it. But yeah, it's approximately 52 stars, and we're right smack dab in the middle of them. And because of our location and the dynamics of our location in the cosmic web, it is a supergate, a very coveted supergate that allows these beings that do a lot of barter and trading to travel all across our galaxy and into other galaxies.
And in the Ascension Mysteries book, I didn't have a slide in here for that. I didn't know he was going to say that, but I actually researched that claim, which he just tossed out on the phone. And sure enough, there is a vertical, what they call plasma chimney, right next to our sun that goes straight up out of our galaxy and off into the cosmos. Totally validating what he was saying. Because, Corey, the stargates, when you actually get a stargate, you're going to see some plasma around it, right?
Yeah, well, normally what you see is the kind of the effect you see on the road, the mirage effect when it's hot outside. And it's not like on Stargate where it's a flat thing that you just walk through. It is a sphere, and you can enter in it from all directions. They'll have one of those opened up, and there will be personnel with their equipment all heading. It looks like they're all about to run into each other in the middle, but they disappear and go in. And it also, I've seen large like metal beams that they're transporting for construction. They'll open the portal in the middle of it, and the beam will fold up and then go in like spaghetti almost.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I always hear new things. That's what's so amazing, is when you have a real insider, like the fake ones on the internet, they keep recycling their story. When you get a real insider, you toss them a totally random question, and you get this amazing answer you never expected. I'd never heard that before. It's really cool. So what is the name that the people on the inside give for these the group that made these ruins? What do they call it?
They're referred to as the ancient builder race. And we've gone and excavated a lot of the ruins. And the craziest thing is they found areas where there used to be writing or glyphs of some sort, but someone had come in and sanded them or removed them, just like the kings would do. The kings would come in, and after they won, they would erase the history of the prior king. Something very similar had been done by beings that came here long after. So it's been a big mystery, and only recently have they found working ancient builder race ruins, or they're not ruins, technology that they've been able to learn a lot more about the ancient builders.
Folks next door sound like they're having more fun than we are. But I think we got a bigger crowd. Let's give them some noise. Give them some noise. Yeah! All right. I think we win. So they said that they originated on Venus. Venus, which is now this weird hot planet. But one of the amazing things that happened to Corey with one of these 5 alliance groups was that he was brought. Let you tell the story. You were brought to Venus, and what happened?
I was brought to Venus, and I was shown a working ancient builder race tower, pyramid-like tower, most likely what the ones on the moon may have looked like. And there was a being there called the Sentinel, who apparently had been put there by the ancient builder race a long time ago. He wasn't AI, but he seemed to... He wasn't... There was something just not normal about him, which may sound weird because that's not normal. But I actually got to see...
We're all friends here.
I actually got to see the ancient builder technology operate, and I was given a download that, to this point, I haven't been able to access. So, I mean, it's incredible technology, extremely ancient, and heavily coveted by not only the military-industrial complex, but just about every non-terrestrial race that is still visiting us.
And so, how amazing is it that we have this Law of One material that gives us this incredible model of a civilization that originated on Venus 2.6 billion years ago and built pyramids all over the place, and then the real-world data from people that have actually gotten these crash disks and gone out into the solar system and checked things out totally lines up with what the Law of One said. And it gets stranger because the Law of One says that everything originated from one infinite consciousness that started it all, and now we have scientific proof of that. And this is another thing I'm just going to say quickly, because probably most of you are aware of this, but a few of you are not. It's worth mentioning. This came out in 2013 in September, where these guys, Nima Arkani Hamed and Yaroslav Trunka from Caltech, and those are tongue twisters, I practiced that. They have figured out that all matter in the universe, all space and all time is a manifestation of a single object. That's very different than what we normally think. It's not the Big Bang at all. It's a totally new way of looking at the universe. This thing they call the amplituhedron. What is the amplituhedron? It is a geometric form, which this, you don't really see it too well, but this diagram, well, no, first of all, let's say what it is. They're telling us that all of space and time can be scientifically derived from this one geometry. In other words, there is no space, there is no time. It's all happening now in one point, and anywhere you zoom down in the cosmos, you're going to see ultimately this one form. And the craziest part about this is the geometry. This is the diagram that he originally made. This is the one that I made for the book, so you can really see it's all tetrahedrons. It's sacred geometry. And the big takeaway for me, this is the original form that Penrose was working on in the 1970s. He couldn't quite solve it, but he got fairly close. He was the guy working with Hawking on the Big Bang model in black holes. He had his own model. This thing, as it turns out, is just 1/4 of your sacred geometry Merkaba, which Richard Hoagland was seeing all over the place on the surface of Mars in the alignment between the objects on Mars. So sure enough, as I phase shift between the two, you can see this is God, if you will. This is the seed of all creation, the creator, the universe. And it's just one form in this geometric pattern. So these guys are saying that's all there actually is, and the Tibetans were saying the same thing. This is their image of the creation. This is their image of the original and the only thing that really exists. Notice any similarities? Yeah, this is called the Vajrarahi Mandala. It's a 2D diagram of the same thing, even with the geometry inside. So what's going on here, my opinion is that the Tibetans were contacted by extraterrestrials who gave them accurate scientific knowledge that we only now are starting to understand. Is that something that, to your knowledge, is happening often, that ancient cultures were being given pieces of data like this that were actually correct, even though we might not know it yet?
Yes, often it's given to them telepathically, but back before they had a certain treaty, they were appearing to people face to face, staying amongst us for a long period of time, giving us this type of information.
And, of course, the Star of David fits this pattern. The Masonic square and compass fits the pattern. And that originally I do not think was negative, though eventually Freemasonry was co-opted to be used as secrecy for very dark groups. All of this stuff apparently started out as positive, and the idea also being that we have Merkabas around our physical bodies. We are a Merkaba. We have that sacred geometry in our soul as well. So all of this stuff in the Law of One led me to understand that if what they were saying was true, there's all these ET groups out there, and there's much more going on around the Earth with extraterrestrials than we think. Now, in the Law of One, they call a certain group the Orion Confederation. Those are the villains. But unfortunately, Don Elkins never asked, what do they look like? And what we found out from Corey, this was one of the hardest things for me to accept, actually, when I started to talk to him, because nobody wants to talk about the Draco, as that book is titled, Don't Mention the Reptilians. So, you remember back when we first started to talk about this, and I was like, wait a minute, you're saying it's like a freaking dinosaur head stuck on a human body? And I was having a hard time with that.
Yeah, and also this Orion group, or this Draco Confederation, is made up more than just the Draco.
Right.
Yeah.
But sure enough, we had this movie come out, Jupiter Ascending, February